Okay, so Kat,
Hello.
you joined Intermarine earlier this year in January. Um, what's been the biggest surprise since stepping into your first HR director role?
So I think the biggest surprise for me is how much I've enjoyed working in a small organisation and the change from previous experiences, obviously working in Barclays, BAE, Serco, really large established organisations. Um, One of the bits that I was most nervous about, I think, is stepping into a smaller organisation and how I would um, kind of would there be enough work for me to do? Would I get bored? How would I um, kind of continue to develop my own skills? Generally, I was quite nervous about that when I accepted the role, but obviously knew as well that it was a area of my CV that was I needed to develop, and working in a smaller organisation was keen to do that. Um, and I think I've surprised myself, and it surprised me of how much I've enjoyed stepping into a smaller organisation, playing that role where I'm really interested and influencing and part of all of the conversations and all aspects of the business. Um, and I've really enjoyed that side of it. And I think that's probably been my biggest takeaway.
Just in regards to context there, so going from larger organisations
Yeah.
to the smaller one, what sort of headcount and size difference are we talking about?
So Barclays, you're looking. So as my previous role was obviously in Barclays, you're looking at sort of 85,000 colleagues
Goodness.
globally, and my role typically was UK and US based, um, and so huge organisation, and I think they're very clear and were always really clear on the role that you do, and that was quite defined,
Sure.
and you only had a certain kind of park essentially to play on. Whereas Intermarine is circa 600 people, um, and I've really found the opportunity to get involved, like I said, in all sorts of conversations, be that key like exec team leader, team member, on the executive team that's helped making all of the business decisions. And it's opened my kind of eyes and ears to so much more insight, which I've really enjoyed, and I've got involved in so much more. So my concerns about being bored or not having enough work to do or not having side projects to focus on, all of those side projects now are almost outside of the HR function and are more commercial based, BD kind of interests and finance type things, which has just grown my knowledge and insight so much.
Probably quite interesting to anyone that's considering, what are the pros and cons. Maybe they've got, I don't know, a couple of job options on the table, one with a larger organisation, and some people, I suppose, would expect based on that they'd have exposure to lots more. But
Yeah,
actually, what we do here is your role can quite often become quite niche, and you're removed from that 85,000 headcount,
absolutely,
and this is very much
absolutely.
your lane that you don't move out of.
And I've felt that in terms of real parameters in large organizations. This is what I need you to do, clear structure, lots of hierarchy, and they need it. It's right for them.
Sure.
Also, from a decision making point of view, making decisions in larger organizations require a huge amount of influencing. You learn a lot of skills on influencing, um, condensing information, giving people what they want to hear, like really kind of homing those skills. But decisions take a long time. They're typically there's a lot more players that are interested, a lot more stakeholders. Whereas smaller organisations, we have decisions to make as an exec team. We all get around the table, we get together, we have a really good conversation, we challenge each other, we're constructive, we've made the decision, we leave, we're on to the next thing.
Yeah.
So the pace of change is great, and also the ability to influence that change is has been eye opening for me.
Um, what would you say has been, or that you found harder than expected?
I think initially when I took the role and I was thinking about how I join the organisation? What do I want people to think of me? How do I show people that I'm credible? I've got all of the knowledge and understanding and can do this role. I translated that probably into having to be the person who has all the answers and knows everything.
Sure.
And I quite quickly worked out that I definitely don't know everything, and that's okay. And ultimately, as well, I shouldn't know everything. And so it was kind of flipping my mindset and expectation, and I guess expectation on myself, that it's like you don't have to know all the answers. My role as a leader is to really give people the opportunity to solutionize themselves, problem solve themselves, come up with the solution, and it might be different to the answer or the solution that I would come up with, but actually that gives us really good insights, different ways of working, maybe a different solution that's better, that's more fit for the business. Also acknowledging the fact that I didn't know the business as well as people that had already worked in the organisation. So I think that's been a step change and a mindset shift for me, and ultimately putting the work where the work should be, rather than kind of bringing everything up to a senior leader level and then pushing it back down. So I've been really focused on supporting my team, developing my team, coaching them to self-solve, problem solve, come up with the answers themselves, and obviously lean in for support and advice and check and challenge. Um, but actually, kind of more on the mindset of come with the solution as well as the problem, rather than just the problem.
Interesting. One thing that crossed my mind, I wondered how welcomed you were made to feel from, I suppose, not just your immediate colleagues, but the wider organisation, the HR team, having come from a slightly different industry, a different background, maybe stepping into your first group HR director role.
Yeah.
Did you feel any? I suspect you might have had some internal pressures there, but did you feel anything on the ground walking in that actually expectations of your colleagues might not be aligned?
Yeah, really good question. I think people's initial reaction was like, what? Or some people's initial reaction were genuine excitement, like we've got a hopefully credible professional HR, like person coming into the organization to kind of change some of the organization and look at things. There are definitely some people that are like, what do you know about working in, heavy engineering, maritime, defence sector? Because when they looked at my previous role of 8 years in Barclays, they were like, well, financial services and engineering don't necessarily
Bit of
align.
disparity there, yes.
So there was definitely, some of that as well. But in the main, as an organisation, like I've felt hugely welcome, hugely supported. I have, so much admiration and respect for the MD, so Rick, in terms of how much time he spent with me at the start in my induction period. So he basically spent 2 weeks with me and took me to all of the sites, talked to me about the business from his perspective, what he thought that we needed to work on, what the strengths were. We had two weeks of really great interactions with everyone in the organisation. He explained a lot, and actually, I think that really helped me understand the business, helped me understand the challenges. But actually, that investment of time straight away from him was hugely beneficial.
And it's quite a different situation than going in as a HR director for the first time, to a function that was perhaps headed up by an FD or something different,
Yeah.
which is quite typical. And because the organisation now has that HR director in, okay, it's like over to you, Kat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Being left to work things out from that point of view, but actually having that onboarding and having that, I suppose, nurturing, supportive environment, it makes all the difference. It makes all the difference.
Yeah, it did. And I really valued his time and his kind of ability to just talk to me in terms of how the organisation's moved.
Yeah.
Really understanding the business and its challenges and the people that work within it. You know, I felt like I had a really great view, and also I understood his view and thoughts. And to me, that gave me confidence in kind of asking the right questions, being credible. You know, when meeting other stakeholders, I felt like I had things I could talk to them about and connect with them about on an organisation level, rather than just like tell me about yourself, which is obviously a really important question, but felt like I was able to build credibility quickly and also answer some business challenges and issues, because of the amount of time that he invested.
Sure.
And I think, you know, when I have new starters and when we have new starters into the organisation, like that's invaluable experience and time.
Going into this new role, did you have any assumptions that turned out to be wrong?
Um, Probably the size of the task.
Okay.
In terms of, I feel like we've really opened Pandora's box. So in spending the 2 weeks with Rick, it was great, and he talked to me about his views, and what he'd seen. And I think then it's always the way when you join a new organisation, you sort of open Pandora's box, and there's a lot more in that in terms of, using my skills and experience and my kind of plan of how I would tackle joining a new organisation, new role, etc. And it's probably it has uncovered a lot more kind of issues, challenges, opportunities than initially thought. But that's the bit that's exciting for me. That's the bit that makes this role a great role and opportunity. And I'm so pleased that I made the move, because for me, I think if I look at my career, obviously, like I said, I've worked in really established, large scale, complex organizations where a lot of the focus was on maybe continuous improvement and refining, and lessons learned and all of that good stuff. But a huge amount and opportunity in this role is about ideation, design, creation, the ability to kind of create the right thing that's really going to give the business the outcome that they want. And not only was that a gap in my CV, but actually there are not a huge amount of HR roles where you get that opportunity to do all of that.
Indeed.
And that's the bit that's been, I guess, the most interesting takeaway is how much we've got the ability to create, shape, design, solutionize, and make it fit for the business.
Interesting point you make, actually, with organisations that have obviously got to a certain point in their roadmap where they require a specialised HR director, and that's normally because they've reached a certain size or they've identified certain problems, and actually scoping the role out pre HR director coming in versus actually what that looks like. Are quite often, you've referred to it as opening Pandora's box, but that's quite often the case. So given that, how do you approach your first 100 days within post? What do you prioritize? What's important to you? How did you embed yourself in the culture there?
Yeah. So I think initially I wanted to do a lot of listening and understanding out within my own function and outside of my own function. And I guess the beauty of it being a smaller organization is you can do that relatively quickly. You can get yourself to site, you can go meet a lot of people, you can listen to what they do, how they do it. So quite quickly I felt like I understood and was quite in tune to what the organisation was trying to do, values, mission, what we were here to do, who our customers were. So initial stage for me was always listening and spending time with people. The second bit was then moving into asking questions of the organisation. So how do we work? How do we make money? Who are our big customers? What are our stakeholders? What do they want from us? What's our USP? All of those kind of questions to understand the whole context of the organisation. What does our next 6 months look like? all of those kind of questions, and asking those throughout the whole organisation generally to see if people say the same thing. And then I spent a really good amount of time with the HR team, understanding kind of what we do today, what works well, really asking lots of questions just to understand, build my knowledge, really to kind of get to a idea of making then a plan for, and in this role it ends up being a plan on kind of fix, focus, grow, in terms of what do we want to really fix and what are those key items, priority items, and how long are we going to do that over. So where we got to is I've created a plan in line with fix, focus, grow. We've got fix activities till the end of the year, and that is everything from introducing or rebranding a suboptimal HR system and getting that into the business and working, through to a huge amount of ER issues and challenges, really professionalising our service. And then we've got some focus areas for moving into the start of next year. And what are those focus areas in terms of next priority items and how do we introduce those? And then we'll be working on the growth side of things. And the interesting part of the role in the organisation that I've joined, the rest of the organisation is in growth mode.
Yeah.
It's looking for new opportunities, new business. That's really exciting, and we're going and doing a lot of work in that space. And yet the HR function is absolutely in fix. But we've been really clear on what we're trying to do. We've been really clear on how we do that and the intent around it. And it actually works really well that we're both in two different phases at the moment, with a plan to obviously get us all to grow.
Going back to your piece about spending that time when you first come in and spending time with your stakeholders, with the HR team, and really listening and understanding their problems. I think when I spend a lot of time speaking to HR professionals, and that commonly comes up. Has that always been the case in your previous roles? If you can picture new leaders coming in above you, any examples? And it doesn't have to be a name and shame, but can you think of examples where someone's come in and thought they knew the problems before they actually witnessed and assessed them themselves? If that perhaps led to frustrations among the team?
Yes, absolutely. I think this is some of the challenge when people move within the same industry. Sometimes when you get, and you see this in financial services, a lot of people will move. When I worked in Canary Wharf, they'll have worked in some of the major banks within Canary Wharf or some of the areas, and in one sense that's great. They bring a huge amount of industry knowledge. They bring really great contacts. There's lots of things that they transfer over, best practice. In another sense, they almost don't seek or spend the time to really understand the organisation, because as a whole they would say, I understand financial services and HR because I've got that experience.
Yeah.
And so I've definitely noticed that. But also, I think one of the pieces that probably people say, if you would say to me, what do people say that work with you? And, how does that, what's it like working with you? I think they would say I'm probably quite open and honest about when we're not doing things right or things aren't working,
Sure.
in a professional and constructive way. But I would definitely call that out as a kind of, hey, are you going to listen? Are you going to ask some questions? Like, I can give you all this feedback and knowledge and insight. I think it's important to understand that, rather than kind of just continue on without that insight and knowledge.
So you spent years leading transformation programs. What's one thing that organisations consistently underestimate about change?
It's a good question. In my experience, the employee journey and the employee voice and the whole value proposition that sits behind change. I think people necessarily, when you talk about change, they go straight to the negative. of what's the impact on me, what's going to happen to me,
Mhm.
am I going to lose my job? You know, people can spiral really quickly, when actually positive change, working smarter rather than harder, a right shift in an organisation, the opportunity to transform, which creates opportunities and stretch opportunities and is so positive, um, and has given me some great career opportunities in terms of seeing an opportunity, the business has transformed or accepted it, and then it's like, great, there's a role for you there, or there's an opportunity to do a stretch project, or but I think from a taking people on the change journey, I think we shouldn't underestimate the sitting and listening to how employees feel,
Mm.
how they found the experience, taking the lessons learned, taking the feedback, asking for, um, bringing to life what it means for them. And I almost think sometimes we're nervous to do that or to spend the time, and maybe we don't see it as valuable time. But actually, one of the returns on investment of any change project has to be, how has it landed in the organisation? How do our employees feel? Do they still feel the kind of trust, and are we still aligning to our cultures and value and vision? And I think sometimes that's a missed opportunity.
Just got me thinking there. Why do you think employees typically lean into negative reaction when they hear about change? Because in my experience, if you did a survey amongst your colleagues, either officially or just at the water cooler,
Yeah.
most people are quick to say, okay, what's wrong in an organisation, and there's clearly change needed. But any change initiative that's normally announced gets viewed with skepticism
Yeah.
and nervousness.
Mm.
What's your take on that? Why do you think people typically lean into the negative?
I think generalization, but humans or people don't like change.
Mm.
They see it as, and maybe it comes from a place of they either haven't experienced it to be a pleasant experience before,
Yeah.
so they're bringing some kind of previous experience into that, or they may have gone through a redundancy exercise. You know, they're applying their whole personal lens to change.
Yeah.
Um, as well as, and there are, you know, HR people are typically the worst people in liking change, whereas it's our absolute bread and butter. um, and that just seemingly creates this ripple of nervousness, amongst the organisation, and that's why I think you shouldn't underestimate the colleague journey
Yeah.
on talking to people at the right time, telling them the right things, but also listening and spending the time to really understand what this means for them and kind of reducing their concerns.
What would you say separates organisations that navigate change well from those that struggle? Any different themes to what we've just discussed?
I think really clear articulation on why, the why, and then the business justification. I think aligning everything back to your vision, your values, your culture. I think helping people understand the the positive impacts of change and why you're doing it. Um, and you know, sometimes I've found in change programs, when we're really clear on what the return on investment is going to be, we're doing this change because we're taking them on the journey, we're telling them the story, and then we're going to tell them when we've done it successfully. Um, those change initiatives seem to have the best kind of impact to the business, and the a reduced amount of stress and worry and negativity. Um, so to me, it all comes down to linking everything back to your kind of core values, mission, strategy,
Sure.
and then telling them the story on the why.
That communication piece is key. So
Yeah,
a lot of the themes around this have been really listening
yeah,
and then really communicating well.
yeah. And I think not being afraid from a senior leader perspective to apply your own lens to change, your own experience and your own lens, but also applying some emotional intelligence to the situation. And that's not, sitting and crying if it's a redundancy situation, but it's acknowledging the fact that this is a difficult message for me to deliver as much as it's a difficult message for you to hear.
Sure.
And I think we are very, when we talk about this best practice, polished HR model, we sometimes can remove the emotion. And that's a missed opportunity because we're still humans at the end of it. There's still an impact at the end of it. And I think we need to kind of normalize the emotion that sits behind, big change initiatives.
Similar theme. What do you think the biggest mistakes that senior leaders make when communicating change?
Probably in terms of what I just said, I think in terms of the ability to move away from maybe some of the more polished messaging that you feel like you should provide because it's the right thing to do, to apply the messaging and give the right message so that people understand
Sure.
that it's okay to put some emotion behind it and some talking from experience, because I think when you put all of that together, people seemingly have more trust and more understanding of the why, and they buy into the kind of leader a bit more in terms of the messaging. And I think that feels like a missed opportunity in some of the change activities that I've done.
Yeah, I think a common theme that I see is that people, in my job as a recruiter, quite often the news that I'm delivering, we had this conversation just before we started this, we go through a process to recruit for a role. At the end of the process, I get to tell one of my candidates the good news that they've got the job, and then perhaps 3, 4, 5, 6 candidates the bad news. Sometimes where recruitment gets a little bit of a bad rap is that the consultant or recruiter I've been working with shies away from that delivering bad news. You often hear, I don't know if I've got that job or not, I'm waiting to hear, or what was the feedback? I didn't get any feedback. And that's in all walks of life, in all business, that being able to deliver bad news, but being as constructive, being as human with it as possible.
Yeah.
Majority of times it's received really well. Look, Jake, you didn't give me the best news, but I really appreciate you taking the time to do that.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. Spending the time listening to people, helping them understand, and really like taking them on that journey. And that's where you really embed change. You see the trust on the other side of it. You continue to see the buy-in. People, if people can align it back to vision and strategy, then and the purpose,
Yeah.
it does over time make sense to them. And I think that's definitely something that I want to advocate in Intermarine, is more on the human side of things. Got some great leaders in the organisation and the exec team. We've got a huge amount of experience and genuinely really great people to work with. Like that's probably one of my biggest takeaways of the role of joining an organisation in the senior leader space of all men, significantly older than me, and a lot of experience. I've been, welcomed. I've been pushed and challenged in all the right ways. I've got a voice. I'm a huge part of that exec leadership team, but also I provided, I think, a different insight as a mother of young children, as a someone who focuses heavily on the people side of things and how messages are going to land and how our employees are going to feel about the experience. But actually, I think I bring quite a different perspective to that group, and we've had some really great constructive space and conversation, but we've left the room with a really great direction of travel that's the best for the business, and we've all aligned to it. You know, I only see that leadership team growing in strength in terms of decision making and the ability to kind of lead the business into the
In your experience, what makes senior leaders genuinely trust the
right direction. Such a good question. I think it's several, for me it's several things. It's being kind of obviously having your domain knowledge and being credible, providing them data-led insights and information to help drive conversations, change, programs or initiatives, having some business and commercial acumen outside of just a people lens. I think one of the biggest things that I see changing from a HR function point of view is just like, you know, hi, I'm Kat and I'm just interested in the people. I'm the people person.
Yeah.
I see that role evolving, and it has evolved so much now in terms of being that strategic, commercial, strategic leader who's involved in huge amounts of different conversations, and you apply the people lens to it, and you apply obviously the policies and the risk and the governance and all of that good stuff, but you're more of a strategic leader. So I think it's having a voice in those forums as well, being really comfortable to challenge and give your views in the right context and, you know, in the right way, is a huge one. And then ultimately, I think understanding the role and the value of HR, the role that it plays in the business. And, you know, there are loads of areas and things that we're involved in, but we shouldn't take that away from the business making the decision and the business leading and driving on and working with HR from a functional, supporting, advising capacity. And we're there really to guide and to do the risk side of things rather than be the decision maker. And I think that's so it's for me. It feels like quite a few things, and all of them are really important to kind of bring to the table and hone our skills at the right time.
What would you say is the difference between having a seat at the table and actually influencing decisions at exec level?
I would say being a strategic player and having an opinion based on skills and experience, previous experience on all areas of the agenda. Playing, so I take the role that I play as a director in the organisation like really seriously, but with a huge amount of pride. And it's a pleasure to do the role, and I definitely feel like I'm at that table for more than just my HR knowledge and experience. Sort of like I touched on before, I'm at that table as um, you know, a working mum with a young family, um, as a would have a view on the finances and the direction of the organisation and how we grow, challenging our team to, if we do that, is it going to help us with our kind of direction of strategy or direction of travel growth?
Mm-hmm.
Asking the questions to help understand the why we're doing something way outside of kind of just the HR function. And I think the reason why I mention this is in previous organisations where I've worked in really established roles and really established teams, I have had previous line managers that have said to me, just stay in your lane, Kat.
Yeah.
Just stay in your lane. This is your lane. This is your role. You don't need to worry about what's going on over there. It's not your concern.
Yeah.
And I've always been really interested in understanding how an organisation works, how an organisation makes money, and I've found that to help me a huge amount in terms of asking those questions. And the bit that I love the most about this role is it allows me to do that comfortably.
Yeah.
And that, I'm learning loads, and I feel like hopefully they're learning loads by working with me as well. And there's that kind of mutual drive. So to kind of come back to your question, I feel like it's about having the ability to talk at all levels
Yeah.
of the organisation and talk about multiple subjects and having a view. And even if sometimes it's playing devil's advocate and putting a different opinion in, it's still a great conversation starter, or it ratifies something, or it enables us to go back to our strategy on growth. That's the bit that I think is different between having a seat and actually really using it to influence in the best way.
Sure. Do you have any advice for HR professionals that might be going through their journey and actually their end goal would be HR director, involved in more things outside of just the people function, but actually bringing in all those different elements of the business together? Um, how do you give yourself the best chance of getting exposure? And I mean, like, how does an HR professional become more commercial?
Mm, mm. It's a good one, and I think it depends on what sort of organisation you work in and their appetite to allow you to expand, or want you to expand your knowledge and kind of understanding. For me, how I've done it is through asking a significant amount of questions to basically anyone who'll listen.
Okay.
Really, and not being a pest with it, but generally interested in understanding more about how the organisation ticks, how it works. I found myself 4 years into Barclays, not knowing how the bank made money. Was really working in a really established HR function, wasn't really working with any customers. I had a really large team. They were dealing with all of our kind of customers and stakeholders. And I found myself in this centralized role, which I was really enjoying and learning a lot from, managing over 100 business partners at its peak. But I looked up and I was like, I don't know how the bank makes money, and I don't know whether our service is actually any good.
Do you think that's important to know?
To me, it was.
Hmm.
Because I was unable to loop back what we were trying to do and our vision and our strategy and direction to anything that was the bank's vision strategy. I was really struggling to kind of loop it all together.
Yeah.
And I think when I think about what I need from an organisation, it's that clarity on what's the organisation's North Star, and then how does the work that I do and how does the role that I play really loop into and sort of plug into that. And I felt quite disconnected.
Sure.
So, for me, it's really important. So, a lot of the opportunity to job shadow, the opportunity to ask questions, go along and talk to people. I've really valued mentor schemes and looked for mentors outside of HR. So, a previous mentor of mine was a Lean Six Sigma specialist. Absolutely fascinating, really, really great insight and knowledge. So, I've looked to place myself in opportunities that are obviously going to stretch me, but the ability to grow my network and also speak to people and meet a lot of people that are not people that I would necessarily meet on a day-to-day basis.
Again, on a similar theme, what would you say separates a good HR business partner from a truly strategic HR leader?
To me, a HR business partner is really that person who solves problems, issues, operational issues using policies, processes, knowledge, experience, and it's very much on a operational level, maybe individually supporting a line manager or a set of stakeholders to a business need. And they do an amazing job at that, and I've loved my roles doing HRBP roles. And really, they answer the question of but they work really well to get all of the right information from the right people. So whether you're working in a COE, you use all of the COEs to bring the information back, and that ability to take information, digest it, make it tangible for the audience. That's the real value that they bring. But it's very much, I think, on an operational, business-led level. The piece for a strategic HR leader is that ability to understand the whole context of the organisation, understand the risk management and the risk profile of HR decisions or business decisions, and then what the impact is on our people. It's that ability to horizon scan and look for things that might be happening in the geopolitical environment or with our competitors. It's that ability to kind of look up and out, not only thinking about kind of HR changes in legislation. So we're in a really important period of our kind of HR time at the moment in terms of HR legislation changes and how do you stay current and compliant, but also, how do you create this function that is best in practice, world class, value add, to then give your business partners the kind of to be able to bring it together and then service their customers and clients. So it's really taking that up a level and looking across the whole organisation and being that strategic player and voice, I think, is for me is the difference.
It's got me thinking. Can you think of occasions where you onto more of a succession planning, but the business partners that are doing the job of a business partner but are really leaning in, and that they're on the track to something greater? Is that quite apparent when you're working amongst that company, do you think?
I think so. I think you can see the ones that have the ability to horizon scan working the people that work in the business versus the people that work on the business.
Yes.
That difference. And you have the ability to be able to see the ones that are pushing either, you or the wider team to work harder, be the best version of yourself. And those people typically do come forward, and also they're great people to work with because, like I said, they not only test you to be the best version of yourself, but you're going to get the best version of them, so you've got that mutual respect and trust. And ultimately, as a result of that, the team's going to get the best outcome or delivery or whatever the goal is that you're trying to achieve. And I'm really realistic to the fact that to sometimes get the right experience and exposure in HR, you have to move organisations, industries, sectors, roles. So a big part for me is, can I keep someone for 3 years rather than 2 years? Okay. Rather than you've got a job for life if you want it. I think I'm really realistic to the fact that we'll have 3 great years with someone. They'll work really hard, but they're going to get the experience, the opportunity, the development that's going to get them the next role. And that's okay. And I've had people that have advocated for me and told me that and given me that safe space to learn and develop and grow, but actually at the right time you will leave, and that's great. And almost the permission that that's acceptable, which I've it's given me as much experience and exposure that it has.
Do you think that's the norm when someone comes into an organisation? It can work either way. It can be led by you as the line manager, as the leader, saying, "I've got a 3-year plan for you."
Yeah.
Versus, do you see that much with from the employee's point of view, that they're joining and their intentions and they're happy to communicate? I need to get as much as I can out of this role over the next 2 to 3 years before I move on, either for the next role internally or onto another organisation. Or it seems almost taboo that you've got to kind of scope out the landscape, and will that be seen as, well, I'm thinking about my next move before I've even got into this one?
I think when I'm honest with them in terms of this is what I see, if we're having a really good like succession planning conversation or performance conversation, or I'm giving them feedback and I say to them, you know, I see you being here for another 3 years, and then potentially we're not going to be able to give you, the organisation is not going to be able to give you what you want or need in terms of size, complexity, scope, opportunity. I've been met with, really? Yeah, that was kind of what I was thinking. I really appreciate you saying that. And it tends to then go into a conversation of, well, why did you decide to leave this organisation? And you get that really great kind of coaching, but also just supporting conversation, and it becomes more natural and then known. And that's when I've seen that conversation work really well. I haven't typically seen a lot of people that go, I'm here for 3 years and I'm going to get as much out of the organisation as I can.
Sure.
But I've definitely had some of the best conversations I've had with people career-wise when I've said to them, this organisation's not going to give you everything you need for the long haul.
Yeah.
And that is okay, and that's the right thing to happen.
That honesty and that safe space needs to be led by the employer rather than the employee normally.
That's how I've seen it work in my experience.
Yeah.
But again, and this is the difference between smaller and larger organisations, isn't it? Larger organisations, it might be, I want to go and try this role, and the role is available in the organisation and there's opportunity there. Smaller organisations, there's less there's less opportunity to go into a specialist role, especially in a HR perspective. You know, so if you want that breadth, you're going to have to move. But I think the open and honest conversation and the baseline and the level set, and I've had people do it to me, and I've really bought into that conversation and found it really respectful and professional.
Yeah.
And actually, it's okay then. It's okay to decide to leave, or it's okay to make a decision. I don't need to be in a job for life, and I'll know when I'm ready.
Yeah. Moving on to talking about future skills. Which skills do you genuinely believe will be most valuable over the next 5 years as things change?
So there's obviously, you know, we see things like AI and the introduction of AI, and that's very much like in this world now. It's not prepare yourself. It's like it's happening
quite quickly.
Yeah, it's happening. It's here. People are using AI. Organizations are using AI. So it's, for me, it's less of that because it's there. It's more on how do we accept the use of AI, have the right policies and governance and all of that, and get comfortable as an organisation. It's like, yes, we'll use it for A, B, and C. But when we talk about skills, then the value and the importance is then on the human side of everything that underpins, that the AI underpins. So it's the emotional intelligence, it's the really important, powerful conversation that you have with people on performance, it's the feedback, it's the how are you today? Are you okay? You seem a bit stressed. You know, the role that the leader and the role that a line manager or anyone in that role of advocating for people and working with people, or even from a colleague perspective, I think we need to continue to practice all of the emotional intelligence that sits behind anything that AI underpins, because it doesn't do that. And I think it's about understanding the skills that, I don't think it's necessarily using AI to get rid of roles or remove roles. It's about people getting comfortable with, my role's going to be different, but actually these are all the skills that I bring to the table, in terms of, you know, adaptability, resilience, the opportunity to think about our total value proposition as an organisation and what it means for people to work in this organisation. I think those are the skills, getting comfortable, probably getting comfortable in the uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And be comfortable in that space, and having the resilience to sort of weather all of these different challenges and aspects and things that are coming in, but applying the human lens on it.
Yeah. With AI in mind, biggest benefit of the implementation of AI in the workplace at the moment?
Like in my team, it's taking away all of the non-value add admin heavy tasks that there's no, that the organization needs it,
Yeah.
but it doesn't align to our mission of value add, best in class, like strategic HR function. It's stuff that needs to be done, but it's repetitive, and that's where I see AI really helping. Also taking the bulk of, documentation of meetings and all of that really good stuff that just needs to happen,
Yeah.
action capturing that stuff that needs to happen, but it might take someone quite a while after or during the meeting to type it up. And I want my team to be working on opportunities and development opportunities, stretch opportunities, stuff that's going to really benefit the business,
Yeah.
that they're going to grow and learn from. And ultimately, so that we can deliver a really good HR service rather than the kind of dull admin related tasks.
Sure.
And that's the beauty of it.
Good. And biggest negative?
My concern is people stop using their brain.
Indeed.
Stop using their brain, and they resort to AI as a, oh well, I'll just ask AI, and then it starts doing all the thinking for you, and then slowly it removes the human lens and the experience and the skills and the practical application that sits behind. I guess why we initially started working in human resources was to, like, if I think about my career at the start, why I started working in HR, I wanted to help people. I wanted to, solve problems. I wanted to be able to genuinely, like, make the people experience as rich as possible. Yeah. I don't want us to divert away from all of that rich kind of culture and experience and proposition of what a people-based organisation looks like.
It's quite scary, actually, going back to the initial question. The biggest skill for the next 5 years might just be one's ability to think for themselves.
Yeah, horrifying, isn't it?
Yeah.
And using all of your skills and experience and knowledge to help drive your brain power, collective brain power.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then if AI does continue in the way and we're not thinking, we just become vessels, then no more useful than a machine or a robot.
Yeah, and also from a career perspective, how enriching is that?
Yeah.
It's not. If you just come in and tap a few things on the computer, that's not going to be enriching or enjoyable. And I think that's the bit that makes me, want to use the collective brain power of people and the skills and experience, because it helps them build their development, understanding, knowledge, and my own. I'm definitely on my own development journey and challenge.
Yeah.
And then, actually, interestingly, from a HR perspective and AI, what we're seeing, or what I'm seeing now, typically is employees are a lot more knowledgeable.
Yes, of course.
About legislation, Equality Act, all of these kind of buzzwords that are really important and have a really big place, and all of the things that we think about on a daily basis when we're doing policies or working with employees, or, are we being right and fair? Are we using our policy? That's hard to manage
because everyone's an expert now.
Yeah, everyone becomes this sort of deep expert. And so I think from a skills perspective in a HR environment, having more understanding and more legally minded kind of thinking and skills feels like it's going to be useful in the future, because we're getting definitely a lot more ER noise cases, grievances, ET1s, as a result of ChatGPT giving them quite a lot of answers and direction,
that might never have developed
which would
prior to
never have
AI.
developed,
Sure.
because it would have been like, I've got a frustration, you'd have talked through the frustration, you'd have helped them, you'd have moved on.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's going to ET1s, it's developing, it's moving on. So I think the skill for HR people is to maybe think with more of a build your skills and knowledge on the legal side of things, and that understanding. Otherwise, small organisations potentially as well will spend a huge amount more on third party legal support to answer maybe more of the generic questions.
Are organisations focusing enough on developing existing talent, or do you think we're still too focused on bringing in talent externally?
I can talk to both sides based on experience that I've had. I think Intermarine is got some amazing stories of talent that they've grown, from joining the organisation as an admin assistant, moving to a finance, moving careers through to a finance manager role.
Yeah.
Admin assistant or junior ops person to an ops manager, moving through the ranks. Like, they've got some really great stories to show on development and opportunities and growth. Whereas some of the larger organisations that I've worked in, I think generally people are less likely to take a risk on known internal moves and opportunities.
Yeah.
And I don't really, when I question myself, I don't really know why that is. And it seems disappointing, because actually you've got some great people internally and not always necessarily looking at it, because they might not be in the right location.
Yeah.
Or they might have had slightly different experience. And so they'll look to take a risk in bringing someone in externally. And I think for someone who was in an organisation looking for the next opportunity and growth and development and was ready, to sort of be told you're not in the right location or you're not doing the right thing feels so disappointing.
Yes.
Just to find someone who's in the right location.
Yeah.
So I think the war on talent is huge, and finding the right talent, and that talent then fitting in your organisation,
yes,
is really important. And to me, it feels like having a mix of both is the best approach. So if I think about in Intermarine, we've made some external hires. I've just brought in a new HR manager into my team externally, because we didn't have the capability internally, and we've got a development plan for everyone, but we were probably 2 years off having a HR manager. And so we needed the ready now talent. But that doesn't negate from us having really good succession plans, talent management conversations about where we see people, how we give them all of the opportunities, the breadth, the depth, and that on the job training, which is obviously hugely important.
We talked in depth prior to this about skill set, experience being relatively easy to determine when you're recruiting, but the more subjective things, culture fit, communication styles, how they're going to work with stakeholders, and actually the business knowledge. So spending an amount of time within an organisation, if you're invested, that gives you an advantage that a lot of external candidates won't have. So that's really tough to identify what does a good culture fit look like, A, on paper, B, interview versus what person actually lands. But another thing I hear from people that have been through a bit of an internal, probably a fast track journey, is the perception of them going from, I'll use an example of an admin assistant who becomes, I want to go down my HR journey, and now I'm in quite a senior role.
Yeah.
Does that person ever shake off being viewed as the more junior member of staff, either by their colleagues who maybe they're accelerating beyond their capability, or indeed by their managers? I don't know how much that plays a part.
Yeah, I've seen that play out as well, and I've noticed that in my own career actually. That's happened to me recently when I've been working back in the naval base.
Yeah.
So my first HR role as a HR admin, HR BP was in the naval base. I've bumped into a few people that I used to work with, and they're like, "How have you got to HRD? I mean, you were just a great HR assistant."
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, and that was 20 years ago.
Yes, but people remember.
But they remember, and
Yeah.
they sort of have this maybe not shelf life, but a thought process on you can get so far.
Yes.
And I think all of that just needs to go. It's not, if people have got the right skills, experience, they want to learn.
Yeah.
This is the piece for me, is the skill and the will.
Yep.
You know, and we can give them the skill, and we can give them all the opportunities. And if you're met with the will as well, that's when, you know, you're in a kind of utopia position.
Yeah.
And that's when you see great people develop. And that's probably one of the most enriching parts of my career and my experience, is seeing people go to new organizations, get that next role, grow their skill set, generally do something or approach something that they would have been horrified. If I'd have told them 18 months ago, you're going to do that, they'd be horrified. And this is playing out in front of me in my own team at the moment. One of my amazing HR assistants, I spoke to her last week and I said, if I'd have told you 18 months ago you were going to integrate a HR system into this organization, and you were going to be, you know, running all the lunch and learns and bringing all the training together and developing the system and creating all the technical bits that sit behind it, you probably would have either laughed or cried.
Yeah.
And generally gone, no, I'm not going to do that. Fast forward 18 months, you've done that. You've embedded, with the help and the top cover and all the support, but you know, you've been that go-to person that the business have gone to embrace this change and push it out into the organization and really kind of drive it. And that's been incredible to witness, even in the last 6 months.
Yeah.
So I take that part of my job really seriously, and I love that part of my role, in terms of helping other people. And it's hugely important to me because other people have done it to me.
Yeah.
And they've pushed me out of my comfort zone. And I've always really, at the time, I've gone, no. But I've embraced it, loved it, learned, reflected. And those are some of the best experiences I've had.
Shows the importance of strong leadership who want to get out the best from their team. Just going back to referring to the colleague that you mentioned there, 18 months, does that person in your team acknowledge how far they've come, or is the imposter syndrome grown with the journey? Always.
It was interesting. Her first reflection was, and she said to me, I feel like I've wasted 18 months of my life because I've not learned anything. That was her reflection. And when I said to her, when you go to an interview and you're asked, tell me about a time when you've introduced a new system, tick. Yes. Got it. Really good example. Tell me about a time when you've influenced a set of stakeholders to, you know, working differently or working in a different way, tick. You know, tell me about a time when you've developed some training for the business to help drive a business goal, tick. You know, we went through all of these questions and examples, and you could sort of see the light bulb go off in her head. And she was like, oh, actually, I've got loads of examples that I can draw on now. I've got loads more experience, loads of general, like, not only life skills, but HR skills that I can use. And she sort of walked out the room. You could tell she was sort of taller and a lot brighter about, oh, I didn't see it like that. I didn't see it like that. And interestingly, she came back the week later and she was like, I really didn't see it the way you saw it. Thank you for kind of giving me that insight.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely feeling like this was what I needed to do, and it's given me loads of opportunity, and thank you.
Yes.
And I saw like quite a different side of her.
And nothing had changed other than the conversation about reflecting and being mindful of what you've done. And I think we're getting more and more feedback, especially over the last sort of 18 months to 2 years or so, about candidates coming for a new job having to be really explicit on things of that nature.
Yeah.
Their CV and their interview approach can't just be, here's a list of my responsibilities as a HR assistant, as an HR advisor. We know that because predominantly wherever you go, depending on size of business, it's going to be the same. But
Yeah.
actually, this is what I've done, this is the impact, and this is why you should care enough to interview me a second time or advance me in the process. So I think a really good skill and a real good activity of a leader with their staff, be it in HR or be it in any walk of life, is to be actually really mindful monthly, quarterly. Let's sit back and reflect. What have you done? And let's build up your portfolio of things that you're competent in so that when the time comes, you can go and really articulate that and give yourself a real good chance. And in turn, that reflects really good on the company because, okay, well, they produce colleagues, staff that really know what they're talking about and are really developing each other.
I think if you can get them to align it back to a KPI, a metric, a goal,
yes,
a strategy or a vision, that then goes to the next level, doesn't it? In terms of really helping a hiring manager or anyone who's looking at your CV and experience, if they can go, well, we did this and we saw a reduction in X, or financially, this is what this did. You know, you can really kind of see the story, but also you can then articulate what I did, what I was responsible for, how I managed it. It's really important.
Yeah. Do you have a book or a podcast that you could recommend to us?
So I've been reading The Culture Code, which is by Daniel Coyle, and it's about building high performance teams. It's about building trust, credibility. I found it really interesting book. Definitely worth a read.
Good. And that's physical book is your preferred medium?
Absolutely.
Or do you...
Yes. Yeah, I do. I like to read and I like to read a book.
Excellent.
Mixture of professional and non-professional.
Closing question here. Quite prominent in today's day and age, I'd say, that you've worked across defence, engineering, financial services, and now maritime engineering. Across all these sectors and leadership experiences, what's one thing you've learned about people that remains true regardless of industry, company, or job title?
Generally, I believe that everyone comes to work to do a good job. And I hold that true to everything that I do, and I use that as a starting place and point for everything. And now, with that, I'm not naive to think that everyone's in the right role or in the right role for them doing the right thing. And that's why I think where we come in and add value and we talk about and look at, fit, skills, experience, capabilities, and we offer solutions to the business to help get them into the right role. But fundamentally, my thought process is that everyone comes to work to do a good job, and also that you shouldn't judge people on your value set.
Interesting.
Because by judging people on your value set, there's likely to be a mismatch unless you're really clear and really are like explain your value set. People are going to miss the mark, or they're going to be off kilter. Whereas actually, if you judge people on basic principles, and this application of people come to work to do a good job, and honesty, trustworthy, professionalism, all of those good things, that seems to get, for me, a better outcome and output rather than judging them against my values.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.